right, everybody, we're about to have a conversation with a rational man, a successful man, and some of the things I like about him are the following superlatives. He is an anarcho-capitalist, a libertarian, a freedom fighter against mankind's two biggest enemies, the state and central banks. You like him already? I thought so. He is Jeff Berwick. He comes to us from beautiful Mexico. He's the founder of the Dollar Vigilante, and he's host of the popular video podcast Anarchast. Get it? Jeff is a prominent speaker at many of the world's freedom, investment, gold, and cryptocurrency conferences, including his own Anacapulco. Anacapulco. I love this. As well as regularly in the media, including CNBC, CNN, and Fox Business. All right. Sorry, man. I have a reaction every time I hear those letters in like that in a row. CNN. It just brings something out of me. I don't know what it is. How are you doing? You look fit and strong, and looks like dear old Mexico. The warmth of your chili would bring new zest to my breast, and vice versa. I mean, it looks like it's really working for you.
Yeah, I love it here. Talking about CNBC and all those, I don't like them either. We just sort of mention them because there's some people who still think those are like something like you'd want to be on. They don't even let me on anymore anyway, because every time I go on, I troll them. I tell them what the Federal Reserve really is, and then they quickly get me off the stage, and then I'm not on there anymore. But some people just like to hear that I've been on those things. But I agree with you. Those aren't, I don't even like to say those letters either. It's obviously fake news. And yeah, I'm here in Acapulco, Mexico, and yeah, it definitely agrees with me, and that's where we have our conference. It's hard to pronounce, but it's called Anarchapulco, and it's the world's largest anarcho-capitalist or voluntarist conference in the world. Wow, that's amazing. Well, what happens at this conference? A lot of voluntarism, a lot of anarchy. It's basically just we just finished it in February of this year. It was 4 days long, and it's all day speakers. We have every major speaker in the liberty and freedom movement speaking. Just off the top of my head, G. Edward Griffin, Foster Gamble, Jeffrey Tucker, Walter Block. These are all people who have spoken at Acapulco. I could just go on and on, but it's really just a sort of a 4-day event for a lot of people to get together and to just enjoy being on the beach in Mexico in February and talk about freedom. And that sounds really good. It really, really does. Well, let's just get into whatever you primarily want to, because it's all about you. I mean, I'm here all the time, and you're visiting today, so I want it to be all about you. But I got to tell you, just warming up here, I'm a little edgy today. I started off by reading something about this Austrian president who says that, I'm paraphrasing only slightly, that in the future women should wear headscarves, all of them, to show solidarity with those who do it for religious reasons. And I'm thinking to myself, well, why don't you throw some gay guys off of rooftops to show solidarity with those who do it for religious reasons? Why don't you have a few honor killings? Why don't you marry off some of your 9-year-old daughters? Why don't you get your head out? What kind of thinking is this? The morning just went downhill from there. I mean, I'm looking at the things that President Trump tried to do. I see these ridiculous judges like this character Orrick, who sorry, but a lot of times what you see is what you get. And when you see a picture of Judge Orrick, you can pretty well figure what you're going to get. I mean, the man even looks unhinged. And, of course, he was a contributor to Obama initiatives here and there, as well as raising like $300,000 for Obama Obama himself, let alone his little splinter groups. And I'm thinking about a note that you had written that used the term Trojan horse. And I like that, because so many people said, well, I think Obama's a Manchurian candidate. It's like, no, a Manchurian candidate doesn't know what he's going to do until he sees the polka dot dress, and then he flips out and does whatever it is he's been programmed to do. A Trojan horse is something else entirely. Let's roll it in. It'll be a great trophy for our great victory, and then out pop the enemy soldiers, and now you're toast. And I'm thinking that that's what Obama was the whole time, but you're wondering if Trump is a Trojan horse. Yeah, well, I'm not just, sorry, you broke up a little bit there, but I think I got you. I'm not just wondering if Trump is a Trojan horse. He is a Trojan horse. I've been saying this since before the election, which I called a selection. I said he was going to get elected, by the way. Most people didn't think so. About a month before, I said for sure Trump's getting in. I could just see all the writing on the wall. They invited him to all the top sort of secret society meetings. They invited him to the Jesuit order meeting right before the election with Hillary. Both of them went and partied with the Jesuits, which is one of the top sort of secret societies that really control things behind the scenes. So I knew that he was going to get elected, and I knew it was, I was there, I was watching when Obama got elected in 2008. And I wrote a whole thing on that looks exactly the same as what I wrote about Trump. I said there's all these people talking about hope and change. There's people crying right now talking about how finally this guy's going to fix things. And I said about Obama the same thing I said about Trump is that he's not going to fix things. It's going to get worse and worse. These guys, this is not an election. It's a selection. You brought up about how the Austrian, I don't know who it was, prime murderer or president or whoever it was talking about everyone should wear headscarves. These people are all in the same club, and they're all doing the same things, and they're doing it for the same reasons. They want to cause as much chaos as possible. That's what this whole war of terror is all about. That they started with 9/11, which was a false flag attack done by the same people. We're talking about the exact same people who control Trump, who control Hillary. These are the same people who did 9/11 to start the war of terror. Now they're going around bombing everywhere in the world. Supposedly Trump, before the election or selection, said he was going to, not do that anymore. Well, as soon as he's in, he's bombing Syria. He's looking at bombing North Korea right now. They're talking about World War III. They brought all the refugees. Well, first of all, they bomb all these countries like Libya and Syria, which is just heinous. Crimes against humanity, massive. Barack Obama should be tried and basically hung, in my opinion, as Hillary Clinton, all of them. Trump as well now, for what they're doing. They're literally murdering and killing thousands, if not tens, if not hundreds of thousands. If you look at Iraq, millions of people, just men, women, and children. People have nothing to do with anything. They're just running over them and just bombing them. They just bombed the world's biggest bomb, the mother of all bombs in Afghanistan, Trump. They do that on purpose, and they do, and then they bring in all the refugees into places like Europe to really destabilize the place and get people actually really cheering for their government to protect them. Well, the government's the one who brought them all in. The government's the one who created all the refugees. That's why I am an anarcho-capitalist, an anarchist, because government is the problem. It's never the solution. People need to take control of their own lives. That's the one thing that people in the U.S. are starting to figure out. Especially with Trump, you could see a lot of people are starting to figure out there's a big problem, a major problem. And Trump came in and he said, I'll fix it all. I'm an outsider. Yeah, sure. He's a billionaire outsider who hangs out with Hillary Clinton and golfs with Bill Clinton like every weekend. Yeah, he's an outsider. I can't believe anyone fell for that one. And he's going to drain the swamp. Well, it's all full of Goldman Sachs people again. I don't know if that's draining it or refilling it or even filling it even more than it was before. He says all these things. He's not going to do any of that stuff. You can never go and tick a box in a closeted booth called voting and hope and think that that's going to actually make your life more free. That is not ever going to work. The only way that's going to work is to stop listening to them, stop obeying their authority, stop paying their extortion fees, which is called taxes, which aren't even, if you believe in the Constitution, which I don't even believe in that, is unconstitutional. Everyone should just stop doing these things, and all of a sudden we'd have a world that's so much more peaceful and prosperous than we could ever imagine if we can get rid of governments and their ugly stepsister, the central banks, which fund all these wars. You couldn't do all these things. That's why Ron Paul said the 20th century was the century of total war. It's no coincidence. It was also the century of central banking. So we just got to get rid of central banks and government, and we'll have peace and prosperity on earth like we've never known it. But of course, the government and the mainstream media, which we all know is fake news, will always tell you that anarchy is dangerous and never, ever take control of your own lives.
Yeah, a fellow named Dr. Gleb Tsipursky, he was Russian. He came on the other day, and he has this thing called the protruthpledge.org. He's a very cool guy and a young guy, and it's basically just tell the truth. Just tell the truth, even if it goes against your grain, even if it goes against your proclivities, your idealism or anything else. Just tell the truth. And if you screw up, admit it and move on. And I really liked him. But one of the things that he brought up during the conversation was that it's interesting to note that none of the WikiLeaks had anything to do with Trump. They all had to do with Clinton's camp. Now, granted, there are a lot of bodies in the Clintons' wake, including Seth Rich. I think he's part of their wake also. But it is noteworthy that there was no mud slung by WikiLeaks toward Donald Trump. And that is curious, yes?
Yeah, I have serious doubts about both WikiLeaks and now even Snowden. From what I've seen from them over the years, they're not telling the whole truth. And you just mentioned that. Just tell the truth. How can WikiLeaks not even bring up 9/11? They rarely ever bring that up. Like, that's just one of the most obvious false flag attacks. That's just obvious. Like, if you think that was done, what they told you on television programming, it's called programming for a reason, that was done by a bunch of people in caves in Afghanistan, you are seriously brainwashed. You need to turn off that television immediately. Anyone who has any sort of brains left, which is tough after 12 years of government indoctrination camps, after all the fluoride in the water, after all the chemtrails, after all the nutrition's taken out of the food, after Bill Gates gives you all your vaccines, not many people can even think anymore, unfortunately. But for those who can, it's obvious that 9/11 obviously was done not by people in caves in Afghanistan, but most likely by the very people who control the U.S. government, whoever they may be. And those, you can use different words for that, Illuminati or banksters, the central bankers, the people who control the central banks, not Janet Yellen and not Barack Obama, not Donald Trump. They don't control anything. They're puppets. Or you can call them the Masons, or you can call them the Jesuits, or whatever. There's a bunch of different names, and they all kind of work together. But people need to just wake up and realize what's going on, and it's not what they're telling you on TV.
Yeah, I'm noticing when I read the name Jeff Berwick that we share 4 letters. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure we're related, okay? We got a J there and a B and a W and an E. So, yeah, I'm in. Look, I'm totally with you on this. I just stood there trying to keep from putting a stupid face by having my jaw drop and not being able to put it back up. When people would tell me that they've done all this research on the internet and they know that the buildings on 9/11 were attacked by aircraft and all that, it's like, you're insane. That's controlled demolition. There's no way in hell that those buildings came down like that on account of airplanes. And what about Building 7? Well, what do you mean Building 7? Yeah, that's just what I thought. Oh, yeah, and Osama bin Laden's poor bastard's dragging his dialysis machine around with him through the desert down there in Tora Bora, and then that whole nonsensical raid. He's living in the biggest house in the neighborhood, right? But a doctor rats him out. But nobody else ratted him out. We got intelligence services all over the place, but it's a doctor who knows him, yes, in that, the biggest house in the whole city. And so here they come. And, something screws up, and one of the helicopters has a problem. So let's just all get on the other helicopter. What? Well, why'd you send 2 in the first place if everybody would have fit on one? And then, of course, the SEAL team gets blown up down there in what's effectively a don't fly through here zone unless you want to kill yourself. And that's what happens. We lose a bunch of brave.
Not to mention that after they kill Osama bin Laden, supposedly, they threw him in the ocean as per Muslim tradition, because that's what the desert people always do. Is as soon as someone's dead, before you actually show any evidence or anything, you just want to throw them in the ocean as quickly as possible. And people believed it. It's unbelievable.
Everybody knows people in the Middle East. Everybody does a burial at sea. And by the way, no pictures. No pictures.
Yeah, no pictures, yeah.
No dialysis machine, no nothing. So it's phony. But this is what's really disturbing. Let me tell you something. I have a problem with illegal immigration. I really do. Everybody coming over here and sending all their money back to Mexico. However, Mexico looks better to me by the minute because, and I never thought I'd say this, Jeff. I never thought I would say it. In fact, I don't think I've ever said this before. I'm becoming downright afraid of this country, but not in the way that somebody might think, like, guys in black busting the door down the middle of the night. That's bad enough. I'm afraid of the, if you will, the disturbance in the force, in the universe. I'm afraid that this country has turned into an offense to God himself. What if I were to posit that to you? Well, I think I just did. I mean, the misery that has been spread all over the world. We have been in a continual state of warfare for, a century, with a few years of not blowing stuff up. And even then we were blowing stuff up that nobody talked about. The press is controlled. It's just, I'm just trying to figure out when we're going to have that breakthrough moment where something might actually change. And sometimes I don't want to believe it, but sometimes I think it's not going to change unless the whole thing is torn down to the bare bones and then rebuilt right. And we're going to taste a lot of pain and chew a lot of dirt if we have to go that route.
Yeah, just talking about just a karma basis alone, the U.S. in general has a lot of karma coming to it. And it's not necessarily the people, although the people did to some extent allow this to happen by being so stupid. But at the same time, they were also brainwashed completely. Like I compare Americans now pretty close to North Koreans as in terms of the amount of brainwashing and propaganda they've been subject to. I just wrote an article about this on the Dollar Vigilante just this week, talking about this nuclear drill they're having in New York and saying how it's all just to scare Americans constantly. They're just constantly under a barrage of fear. And it goes all the way back to the duck and cover. You might remember that back in the 1950s, duck and cover. And they get little school kids in their schools in the middle of Nebraska to like hide under the desk. Oh, it's a nuclear bomb and atomic bomb. So the Americas has just been under this onslaught of propaganda and fear-based mind control for decades now. So, it's hard to say if like Americans in general deserve some sort of blowback. I don't even like to think about that. I hope no one gets any blowback. I just hope we move on to a more peaceful world soon. But yeah, on a karma basis, you could definitely see it happening but I think it's actually planned. I think what's going on is the people who control everything have decided they're going to, for whatever reason, they have all these very occult sort of ideas and very satanic. And they, for whatever reason, they want to move the center of power now to Asia. In my opinion, from what I understand of it, and they want to basically destroy the U.S. to do that because they want to make actually all countries pretty much destroyed, sort of like what communism does. They like communism a lot for that reason. They want to make most places quite communist. And now you have like the U.S., which is fairly communist. It's quite socialist. Like everything's centrally planned. The whole money system is centrally planned by the Federal Reserve. Everything you want to do has a federal three-letter agency that's overseeing it. That's central planning. That's Politburo. That's communism. So they want to bring everything down to one level and sort of even the playing field so they can bring in this one world government sort of thing as their general plan. So when you say that you're getting worried about the U.S., I don't blame you at all. I've seen this coming for about 10 years. I've spent most of my time in Mexico, which actually the only thing I don't like about Mexico is how close it is to the U.S. because I think that's going to be ground zero for all the major problems. And I think, you talk about illegal immigration, I think that wall's to keep Americans in. It's not to keep people out because there's actually more Mexicans leaving the U.S. every year now than going there. And it's been that way for 5 years because it's so unfree there now. And actually the economy is not doing it very well because it's on purpose being destroyed, as I pointed out. And they're on purpose trying to improve the economy in places like Mexico, which is, the Mexican stock exchange is up hundreds and hundreds of percent in the last 10 years because it's improving. And that's all part of their sort of global, as they call it, sort of balancing and trying to get every country to the same level. And then it's just going to all basically be horrible, really. People are starting to wake up to it, but not really fast enough at this moment in time. But we'll see what happens. We have the internet now. That's the only hope. And that's why they talk all the time about internet kill switches. And they talk about EMPs all the time, electromagnetic pulses. That's actually what they're doing a drill for yesterday in New York City, an EMP, and they've been talking about it for a while. An EMP would essentially turn off all the electronics for a period of time, including possibly decades, which would eventually, people have speculated, and I think it's totally true, kill 80-90% of the people in places like the U.S. without any power. They just can't handle it because people there are so dumbed down and indoctrinated and fluoridated that if they turn off the power and they don't get access to their EBT cards, there's 50 million people on food stamps in the U.S. now. It's 1 in 4 children in the U.S. are on food stamps. It's a total welfare communist state now. That when that's all taken away, people are just going to panic and all start killing each other. Unfortunately, I hope it doesn't happen, but that could totally happen. So. Yeah, I have some very dire looking things for the future. I also have some very positive things. I think if enough people wake up, if enough people listen to this show, if enough people listen to what I'm saying, and we are growing. I don't know about you, but I'm growing massively. We have a chance to wake enough people up so that they don't fall for this and actually just turn away from these globalists, these central banks, the big governments, giant governments like the U.S. federal government. If you want the U.S., go back to 50 states just to start. and stuff like that. Eventually, hopefully, we can get down to every city its own government, and every person's its own government. We have 7 billion governments on Earth. Eventually, that'd be the most perfect way that the world could possibly be. But just start with something like that, getting rid of the federal government. So we'll see what happens. The globalists know they're losing control. That's why they're moving fast forward on everything. I can't even keep up with it at the Dollar Vigilante. We have to pick of 10 different things to talk about every day. I have to pick just one usually. And I remember when I started doing the Dollar Vigilante in 2010, I thought, what am I going to talk about every day? And now it's like, what isn't there to talk about? I have to just choose one of 10 major things every day to talk about now. So they're fast forwarding right now. This is go time, and it's going to be interesting what happens.
So, who do you think is going to be the one to pull the trigger? I mean, let me just throw some stuff against the wall, see if any of it sticks. That Syrian gas attack, I think it's a complete lie. I don't see that at all. 59 Tomahawk missiles. Okay. Really? That was expensive. And what did you blow up? Okay. And, I've seen all these pictures of course, you're always going to see the women and the children, but when you see the children all blown up like that, like they're somebody's biology experiment, and you know that this was done by U.S. ordnance, that's a little troubling. And then just as it looked like maybe the Russians and the Americans were going to get together and sort the Syrian problem out, then all of a sudden Bashar al-Assad has launched a gas attack against his own people, that tired old phrase, and so they blow up a base. They don't even that. They don't blow up the presidential palace. Right, they blow up a base over there, and so now we got this little dude, Kim Jong-un, and I don't know if this is just a cartoon that's really, really lifelike when we see pictures of him and so forth, or if he's a real lunatic that wants to do this thing. But none of this looks normal. None of this looks rational. I don't see any logic to it at all. I mean, even when Adolf Hitler rolled into Poland, what he wanted to recover Danzig and all the property that had been lost at the Treaty of Versailles. Okay, well, I get that, but I don't get what we're doing in the Middle East and staying in the Middle East and just blowing stuff up and destabilizing one country after another. And I mean, you're hearing tired old phrases coming from me right now. But I mean, look what happened to Libya. Look at Iraq. I mean, look at all of these places. They're just destroyed. And I'm just wondering. And I keep asking the same question, but I figure if I ask enough people, maybe I'll get the answer. I'm gonna have that moment when I get the answer to the question: what are we doing there? What do we want? And I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to know exactly. There's so many different objectives and plans. I think I think there's definitely something sort of religious based that they want to control that area as well. But in general, the people who control the U.S. government also control the U.K., they control Israel, they control Russia, they control China. So all these sort of like they're going to go to war or whatever, it's all a show. And this has been the same show now for decades. And if you look at all these wars, just look at every U.S. war that the U.S. has been involved in. It's all been based on lies. It's all been based on false flag attacks. You look at even World War II. They wanted to get into that war so bad. Now, it was actually, you brought up Hitler. He was actually financed by the Bush crime family. All the same people. They back both sides and they create all these things. They love war. They're very satanic. They love to see a lot of people die. They love to see people killing themselves because they're not actually killing them, right? They're not actually sitting there with the gun. They love the fact that they can make people do it to themselves through their propaganda and fear and all that sort of stuff. So you look at World War II, and they wanted to get the U.S. into that war so bad, so they cut off the oil supplies to Japan, and Japan has no oil whatsoever. They had a few days left, and it left them really no choice but to attack Pearl Harbor. They knew it was coming. They didn't do anything about it. They let it happen. Then they went, oh, look, they attacked us. Now we're in. And they went and attacked everything, of course. You look at Vietnam. That was the Gulf of Tonkin false flag attack where they said their ship was attacked by the Vietnamese. It was actually attacked by themselves. Even that was all admitted. This is like stuff you can just look up. It's actual factual like documents from the government saying that they did this. Then of course after that you have 9/11. That was a false flag attack to start the War of Terror. It was like a few weeks after that General Wesley Clark was called into the Pentagon, and he was shown a piece of paper showing 7 countries they wanted to attack and occupy and destroy in the next 5 years. On that piece of paper was Iraq, of course. Then there was Syria. Then there was Libya. Are these ringing any bells? Yeah, this is all on YouTube. You can look it up. He talked about this. Then, of course, after that was Sudan, Lebanon, one other, and Iran. Iran's the big one. That's the last one. If you look at the amount of U.S. military bases surrounding Iran, and Iran as a country has never attacked another country for centuries, and the U.S. government is attacking countries daily, and they're saying, oh, Iran's the bad guy. Well, it's all lies. It's all propaganda. It's all to essentially take over everything. For example, Libya, when they attacked Libya didn't have a central bank. That's the main reason. And Gaddafi wanted to start a gold-backed African currency, which goes against the central banks. The central banksters are the ones who really control all this stuff. So that's why they destroyed Libya. And Iran doesn't have a central bank, and Iran doesn't want to use the dollar. I think they just stopped using the dollar. So that's what happened with Iraq. That's what Saddam Hussein wanted to stop using the dollar. He wanted to start using euros for oil, killed, hung. Gaddafi wanted to start a gold-backed African currency. He was raped in the streets while Hillary Clinton cackled. We came, we saw, he died. These people are like satanic, sociopathic, evil people, and they're just trying to take over everything, destroy everything. We just have to stop them.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I got to say something here. Right here on the program that bears my name, I've had some pretty strong opinions about things, but I begin to question the passion behind some of these opinions. Because it's one thing to say nothing is really as it appears. That's a cutesy little catchy slogan. The problem is when it appears to be absolutely true, that you cannot believe anything you see. It's the damnedest thing. Like Pompeo and Trump. Notice I called him Trump instead of Mr. Trump because I'm mad at him right now because I'm wondering what's going on. I don't know if he's been compromised. I thought he loved the country, and all of that. I would really hate to think that he's just one of them in a different suit. I really would. He's going to it's going to take the fall for trying to do all of these things, whether it's a travel restriction or a border wall, and then have these judges just stop him. How can a judge legislate from the bench? Well, they do it all the time. It appears, but now Pompeo and okay, Mr. Trump. I'm not ready to turn on him yet. They were all about WikiLeaks and getting this information out there, and now they've gone the other. Pompeo at least has gone the other way. The CIA director, he's like, no, this is not working. Well, before he was all right with it, and as you were talking there, I never really cared for Wesley Clark, General Clark. I thought, what are you doing? Well, I think more of him with every passing day now. So it's just really, a human being is compelled to make a decision based on the best information at the time. And their decision may be a good decision or maybe a bad decision. So there are a number of components here at play. But I'll tell you got to be prepared to change gears and change your mind about stuff. You cannot get a set and just stick with it. And we talk about this all the time, but honestly, talking about it all the time, I still have to fight it myself. It's not a done deal in my consciousness, if you will, that, yes, I've listened to these brilliant people talk about how we should think about things and how we should observe, but it's like sin, You can believe in the Lord, you can be a Christian, you can do all that, but you will have a daily ongoing battle against drifting away from that all the time, and you just cannot decide that things are a certain way. That's just how it is, because it's liable to 15 minutes. You don't know where you're going to be 15 minutes from now in your thinking, if it's flexible at all.
Yeah, on that note, I've personally I change almost daily. I've just realized. I talk about this stuff a lot. It's kind of funny that I'm just realizing it, but pretty much everything we've been told is a lie. Everything, like this goes way beyond government stuff. The moon landings. That's just look into that for like 10 minutes, like what really happened. There's no way they went to the moon. Everything's a lie. Absolutely everything. Everything we've been taught. And of course, who are we taught by? The government and 12 years of government indoctrination camps. What a surprise. They're teaching us all propaganda and all wrong information about history and who are the good guys and who are the bad guys. It goes way beyond all this. And it actually, you're talking about changing, just realizing about yourself even. That's what I've been getting actually introspective now. I've started to realize all the stuff about the outside world, and now I'm like, okay, now I got to change stuff about the inside, because even that's screwed up because of all the things that I've kind of been subject to in my lifetime. Just being born and then immediately having half the skin of my penis chopped off in some sort of crazy genital mutilation ritual called circumcision, which causes a massive amount of trauma to the kid. They do this on purpose. All this stuff, just looking into the backing of everything. So basically, George Carlin, one of the best comedians in my opinion ever, one of his big things was, I don't believe a thing the government, and I think he said the media, but if he didn't, he should have said the media tells me. And I used to laugh at it because it was funny, because it was true, but I didn't realize how true it was. Everything we've been told is a lie. We have to really reassess everything that we've ever thought and why we thought that, and then go back to, okay, why did we think that? Were we acting on the correct information? And thanks to the internet, a lot of information is getting out, a lot of what people call truth. And now it's kind of funny that they call truthers, like that's a derogatory term. It's like, oh, you're just a truther. You just believe in truth. It's like, yeah, kind of. I didn't know that was a bad thing, but a lot of truth is coming out now. And so you just have to reanalyze everything and what you really believe in. So, for example, with yourself, I don't know you that well. I don't know anything really about your background or anything. But it sounds like you kind of had some hope for Trump. It kind of sounds like you're what someone would call an American patriot. You have to reanalyze what even was the U.S. That was really, in my opinion, a coup, takeover from the England, but it also got retaken over by England. It's still all owned by the London banksters, in my opinion. But you're trained in your schools about the founding fathers, like it's some weird cult, and it really is a cult. That's why you do your Pledge of Allegiance for every day as a kid. That's on purpose. Vladimir Lenin said, "Give me your child for 4 years. The seed I'll plant will never be uprooted." They got him for 12 in the U.S. and just doing their Pledge of Allegiance, and they got the president's photo up on the wall, and he's great, just like in North Korea, just like with little Kim in North Korea. He's great. He's going to protect us. You have to just reanalyze and rethink everything. And I'll tell you, I've been going down this rabbit hole for a number of years, and I keep going down, and it just keeps going further and further and gets crazier and crazier. But just reanalyze and reassess everything. And yeah, I said that recently in a blog I wrote. I said, if someone changes their mind on something they had a very serious opinion on, based on new information or information they did not have before, that's something to be highly commended. People who do that are people you can kind of look at and go, okay, he's actually rational. He's using his brain. He's thinking. He's open to changing his mind if he gets new information he did not have before. Those are the kind of people you want to hang around. It's the people who just believe dogmatically everything they've been told their whole life and never considered that there could be something else going on. Those are the kind of dangerous people, and unfortunately, that's the majority of people in the world today.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. I was just flashed back to high school and the Vietnam era. I've been complaining about this recently. First, as children, we had to listen to the sonic booms overhead until the cows gave it up, and then they went, well, we better stop that because the dairy farmers are bitching. And then so we hide under your desks, kiddies. If the A-bomb goes off, you'll be safe. Yeah, sure you will. And then after that, we had Vietnam to look forward to. And I'm thinking, I'm 15 years old, being instructed by a Green Beret Master Sergeant on how to cut people's heads off with whatever was handy, like a piano wire and improvise. I mean, we were learning about improvised explosives, reading Army manuals, how to build all this stuff, and field survival techniques and everything. And I wondered and that music, man, that was new back then. It's like oldie stuff now, but you play it now, and I put myself back in those days, that atmosphere of this music, that as if, Bob Dylan just did such a brilliant dissertation on this about rock and roll. It was chrome, man. It was it was delivered by an A-bomb, and Dylan, he's just me. You know what I mean? That's what he said. I'm just me. But he said that music, the atmosphere in that world, it was fear. Everything could end tomorrow. Everything could end. And I think to myself, why would you want to inflict this head trip on an entire world? I mean, what is wrong with you? And I got to tell you, Jeff, this is why I literally flee. I mean, this isn't church, but I flee to the stronghold, which is the Lord and the Bible. Because you read the Bible, you find out it's been like this all the way back to when the book was written. Absolutely nothing has changed. It's just the weapons have gotten more effective. But even that's not true. You can't get deader than dead, whether it's a sword or whether it's an A-bomb. So these human beings are a wacky bunch. They really are. And these families, these sovereigns, these majestic goblin kings and queens that just wander around messing with everybody, I'm not sure they can ever be dislodged or shifted. This guy, this Austrian president I mentioned earlier, his name is Alexander van der Bellen, and he did this thing. He is the far left guy, and he declared, they said it was a campaign prank kind of, but anyone who loves Austria must be SHIT, must be, but he really means it. He hates his country. He hates the idea of borders. He is an insane Marxist. He really is. However, out of about 5 million votes, he squeaked by with an additional 30,000, so he won the popular vote, and he won the vote by ballot as well. So, how do you govern a world where people are literally split almost exactly 50-50 on the way things should run?
Well, that's the thing. You can't govern the world. We got to get rid of government. People are only dangerous when they have things like government and have that, the extortion and taxes, that billions of dollars that they can use to do and make people do what they want them to do. Without that, it'd just be people. And I don't know about you, John, but like when I traveled the world, everyone seems pretty nice, everywhere. I've been in the Middle East. I've been in Jordan. I've been in Qatar. I've been in so many places over there. Everyone seemed really nice. Maybe some of them aren't very nice. I don't know, but they seemed really nice. They didn't seem to want to do anything to me. I didn't really want to do anything to them. We wanted to trade a little bit. I wanted maybe some, alcohol or something. They wanted some money. Great, good deal. But it's when you have this sort of this super collectivism. That's the danger. That's what causes all these problems. So all the problems in the world today and all the problems, and you said this goes all the way back to the Bible. Every single problem has been with government. Look at Rome. What happened to Jesus, right? That was the government killed him. This has always been the problem. And look who Jesus, the only time he got angry was with the money changers. What's that? The central banks, the people who create the money and control the money and lend it out to you at interest rates, and it's all debt. Those are the only people Jesus ever got mad at. So get rid of the governments and get rid of the central banks, and we have peace and prosperity on earth like we never know it. Now, how we get there is a long, hard story because so many people are just so confused. But as I pointed out with what's happening with Trump, a lot of people are looking for answers right now. And some of the answers are just things like Bitcoin. A lot of people don't understand Bitcoin, but it's a non-central bank currency that can be used. You can pretty much, no one can stop it. No one can seize it. You can actually hold it all in your own brain just by remembering your password. So it's a perfect money. It's not inflated like central bank money, so you can't use it to finance wars or anything like that. Just little things like that can actually shift the world. And it's actually happening in certain ways. And things like the internet are the big one. That's what's really given us this opportunity. Before this, we had no hope. I would have never known 99% of everything I know right now. I would never have known you. I would never heard of you. I would have never heard of most people I know today. The internet has changed the game, but they know that now too. They're slow to catch on to it, but they're trying to. That's why they're calling all this fake news now, trying to do all this censorship, trying to stop it. But we have to be vigilant vigilant and make sure and just keep going as humanity and keep going around them. And hopefully at some point get people to realize the biggest problem in the world always is government and central banks. And I'm not necessarily saying we need to go to full anarchy where there is no governments on earth right away. That most people aren't ready for that. But like I said, in the US, let's just go to 50 states, right? Like, let's decentralize. The problem is centralization. And that's what the globalists want, is one world government, one government in the whole world. That's it. Let's have more governments. Let's have, like I said, in the U.S., let's have 50 states be governments. And then it seems silly to people. They'd be like, did you hear Idaho just attacked Syria yesterday? And people are like, why would they do that? Is there potatoes in Syria or something? They wouldn't. It's all brainwashing. Because they're all together, Idaho's with California and New York, they have to go attack Syria because they're going to... they have for some reason Syrians are threatening the U.S. And just like you brought up the cartoon character Kim, little Kim as I call him, they just create these things, these caricatures, and keep people in fear constantly. And people just need to wake up out of it. And if they don't wake up out of it, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse.
You seeing World War III on the horizon?
I think it's going to be interesting. They definitely are positioning for it right now, absolutely. They're positioning, I've said this for a while, in Syria. That's where it's going to start. I think something's going to happen in Israel this year. I have various reasons to believe that. I think it's going to be based in the Middle East. It's going to start. Of course, you got Trump saber rattling all over the place. He's basically saber rattling with Russia right now, which, remember before the election, hey, we should be friends with Russia. Oh, yeah. And then he goes and just attacks, all this stuff. Russia's fighting ISIS. ISIS is the CIA. Everything is lies, right? And then he's over in North Korea, which, who even knows what's even there? You can't even go there. The only person who's ever been there is Dennis Rodman. And, I don't know if you can really trust his opinion on anything. And they're saying, oh, they're a threat. I don't think so. But anyway, China, that'll get China involved. So basically, it easily could be World War III. But they're never going to go full World War III like nuclear bombs. And there's actually a lot of speculation that nuclear bombs don't even exist. And this is what I go back to: question everything you've been told. What's the evidence that there is nuclear bombs? A lot of people say Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the two biggest terrorist attacks ever conducted in the history of the world by the U.S. government. But those could have been firebombs. There's really not a lot of evidence. I think they use these nuclear bombs to keep everyone in fear. And that's what the whole Cold War was about, in my opinion. I think that was all just made up by the same people who did 9/11, made up by the same people who did the Project for a New American Century, Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld, all these, Paul Wolfowitz and all these guys. They always think the U.S. needs an enemy. This is their crazy thinking. But it's also about control and power. So you have all these people, they're attacking all over the place right now. But I don't think it's going to erupt into what you would call a World War II sort of a situation. The world, people are, first of all, way too fat, way too stupid, way too slow to even get out of their basements and go and fight anymore. So that's actually one good part about how, slovenly most people have gotten and how lazy. But we won't see something like that anymore. And but we'll see they're going to start up definitely issues, and they're going to scare everyone, and they're going to scare people enough that they want an even stronger one world government, which is the United Nations, which is essentially what they want to be the one world government, to get rid of all the national sovereignty, which is things that you care about, things like the U.S. actually being its own governed by itself. It barely is anymore anyway. It really has never been, and their goal is to have it all controlled by the United Nations. So we'll see what happens. I think this week is actually very interesting. This is the biggest satanic celebration of the year, called Beltane, and all the globalists, all the people who control the governments and the central banks, they're all Satanists. I think they might do something with North Korea this week. We'll see. The big thing is that people need to stop falling for it. So whatever happens, even if it's an attack, even if they do a false flag attack like 9/11 in the U.S. again, question who did it before you get behind the government and go and fight and attack another country, because it was probably the U.S. government who did it. And thanks to the internet, we have that capability now. So even this drill in New York that happened yesterday for a nuke, that could have been a drill ready to go live, like a 9/11 drill, but enough people found out about it and exposed it that it's possible, I'm just speculating, that it's possible, if that was a drill, that they called it off. So we've just got to keep on top of it, be aware of what they're doing, and not fall for it. Do not have any fear whatsoever, no fear. and just because that's how they control people. That's how they've controlled Americans for over 100 years now, is just kind of constant fear. As you pointed out, you're sitting there under your desk in the 70s going, oh my God, we're going to die. You weren't going to die. I don't even know if nuclear bombs exist. Definitely there was no Cold War with Russia. That was all made up to keep everyone in fear.
Well, I just came across this article here. You were just talking about the, Gaddafi wanting to do an alternate banking system, gold-backed, of course. And here it is, Russia leaving global banking system from ANONHQ, Anon headquarters, I guess it is, AnonHQ.com. Many economists have informed the world leaders of the consequences facing them if they remove Russia from the SWIFT system and so forth. And then you just mentioned the drill in New York that got leaked. Well, it's 226.2 miles between Washington, D.C. and New York City. And there was just an article yesterday that, Kim Jong-un sets his sights on the White House. So, 200 miles is nothing. In a car, it's 4 hours, because no matter what you do, you're going to average 50 miles an hour. That's it, I've tried to fight that algorithm for a long time, but that's what you're going to get, 50 miles an hour average. So I'm thinking that we are being set up for it, because they, between the so-called populism, people getting wise to everything, well, not everything, but more than they had any idea was out there to get wise about. Between that and the Brits going, we don't want any more of this European Union, and then idiots like this Alexander, the lunatic over there in Austria, who despises his own country, things seem to be really coming apart at the seams. They really do. It doesn't look like it. Like, the world, it's always been in chaos. There have always been wars and rumors of wars. No, not quite like this. Not when you can get halfway around the world in just a few hours. You can hit each other from space. Everybody knows we have space-based weapons. Why would we have a United States Air Force Space Command if we didn't have, weapons in space? I'm pretty sure they're up there. So, fine. Now the question is, when you wrote your book, Shemitah Trends, and Jonathan Cahn wrote his book about the Shemitah as well, and it looked like it was going to be pretty serious. But people kind of forget, because there's so many images and so much data hitting everybody all at once. You can only dwell on each piece for just a few seconds, and then you got to move on, right? But did you find that those things that you wrote about came to pass? We just didn't notice them, or they weren't as dramatic as we thought they might be?
Yeah, definitely to an extent. What happened with the Shemitah was I read Jonathan Cahn's book, and I actually just talked to him this morning. He's actually working on a new book. It's just coming out in the next couple of weeks. He says he might have to flee the country after he writes it, so that's interesting. But I found out about the Shemitah, and what happened was in 2001 and 2008, on the exact end day of the Shemitah, was the biggest market crashes in history on those exact days, and one of them was even down 777 points. The Shemitah is all about the number 7. There's a lot of stuff in the Bible, obviously, about the number 7. God created the world in 7 days, etc. 6 days and then rest on the 7th. But we still have 7 days in the week and all that kind of stuff. It's all related. And so I got really curious about it. And the last Shemitah actually ended in September of 2015. And a lot of people forget this. That's how much things are happening so fast. On August 2015, we had the biggest market drop in history on the Dow Jones of over 1,100 points intraday. And actually our subscribers, because we were positioned for something to happen during the Shemitah period, we've made 4,500% in 3 days during that time. So this is, people long forget this stuff. But that happened during the Shemitah. So I've actually been getting into this, and I'm actually about to release a bunch of new information I just found out about. But to more explain it, though, what I realized was that the people, I've started to realize exactly how they're controlling the world and who controls it and what they're doing. And a big part of it is numerology. So I looked into, you look into these Satanists, it's all about numbers. So like watch, for example, to always use the number 33. If you ever see a news story, a major news story, and it says 33 people died today, that's usually a signal that it was a false flag or hoax event because they put these numbers out there because because 33 is the highest number in Scottish Freemasonry, which is one of the top secret societies. Freemasons all founded the U.S. It's a very Freemason, everything about the U.S. You look at the entire Washington District of Criminals area, it's all lined up exactly how the Masons wanted it. They don't talk about this. You just look on the back of the $1 bill, you'll see a pyramid with an all-seeing eye. That's one of the sort of a Masonic symbol. So it's all secret societies and all these sort of things. And the IMF person, I forget her name, Christine Lagarde, said a couple of years ago, she said she had a whole speech on the magic number 7. So that's what really got me looking into all this stuff. And I started to realize that they do certain things on certain dates. So if you look at Brexit, for example, which I think was done on purpose, a lot of people don't see these things go very, very deep. But that happened exactly 7 years, 7 months, 7 days, and 7 weeks, I believe, after the end day of the Shemitah in 2015. The day after Brexit was the biggest market drop worldwide in history. They do these things on purpose. And I've actually uncovered that there's some dates coming up this fall again that are incredibly important. But yeah, I've gotten into this stuff, so it's kind of weird for me. So just so you know, I never read the Bible or much or anything, and I was kind of really, I didn't think all that much about supernatural or life after death or religion or spirituality or any of that stuff until a couple of years ago. And one of the big things was the Shemitah. When I started looking at that, I was like, I better read the Bible. And I read the Bible. I was like, man, there's a lot of information in here that I wasn't really aware of. That's really good information. And it's important that you know this stuff. And so I just got into it all through that sort of a thing. So it's kind of funny how I came into all this stuff. And I've become incredibly spiritual, actually, in the last couple of years. It's actually led me down this path to absolutely believing in God. Like, I just can't believe anyone wouldn't at this point, if you look into it. But exactly how and what and what you should believe about everything is really almost impossible to discover, but you kind of have to find your own truth inside of you and actually make your own connection directly with God, in my opinion. So I've gotten into all these things. So yeah, Shemitah, absolutely. There was so many things that happened exactly. The first day that actually they put up borders all around the European Union, so it was actually effectively the end of the Schengen zone, was on the exact end day of the Jubilee. Last year, which actually I think I got the Jubilee year kind of wrong, but that was the actual end day, which is almost always on the end day of the Jewish calendar, because everything's based on the Hebrew calendar, of course, especially biblical related stuff. Yeah, there was so much stuff that happened. That happened on the exact end day. Was the Schengen area broke, and what's happened since then? Constant chaos with refugees in Europe. The European Union constantly breaking out. We have Brexit after that. Had France. It looks like it's going to be Le Pen. I think it will be. I've been predicting that. Same as I predicted Trump. They're going to actually try to sort of break up the European Union to cause a lot of chaos, and then try to bring in so much chaos, possibly through some sort of world war, which we're already kind of in, to bring in a one world government is essentially what I think is generally going on. But just like you, I changed my opinion based on new information I get all the time. And I just this last week got a bunch of new information, so I'm trying to figure out what's going on now. But yeah, these are very satanic, very evil, very occult. They're very into things like black magic, and that stuff's real. I've looked into it enough now. Like they're dealing with otherworldly entities like Satan and demons to control and do a lot of this stuff, and you can actually see that. So yeah, this stuff gets crazy. Like I said, this rabbit hole goes very, very deep.
Oh boy. Well, you're certainly giving us a bunch to chew on. There'll be some people will have a little difficulty. They'll be sleeping fitfully tonight. Probably many of them are thinking about dear old Mexico and that zest to the breast thing. Well, now, Bitcoin is a little confusing to me. I've talked to a lot of people about it. And Andrew Yashchuk's talked with us about it, and a couple other people as well. The only thing that bothers me, I'm all over the place here, Jeff, but I'm thinking all these roads lead to Rome, back when it was cool to go to Rome, or uncool, depending on how you look at it. Paul Craig Roberts did a genius piece the other day talking about why in the hell does everybody rely on the United States for everything? Why? I mean, Google can recognize your voice now. And I made a threat yesterday which was, you duplicate my voice and have me saying stuff like that, and I'm gonna get hold of two things right away. The most horrible lawyer you could possibly dread having file a lawsuit against you, and number two, my Ray Donovan edition baseball bat. I'm coming to find you. I will leave you where I find you if you duplicate my voice and have me saying stuff out there that I didn't actually say. But I digress. Why are we putting up with this Google nonsense? Look, Jeff, ultimately it's a philosophical question. People resist change. They don't want anything to change. Even though they know things change, they know that it must change. And we have all these cliches like, the only thing that is constant is change, but we just won't bloody well do it. So why is that? Why can we not break free from this one internet that they developed, at UCLA back in the late 60s or whatever, and finally came online in a limited way somewhere around 71, 70, 72, something. I may be off a few years, but whatever. Why isn't there an independent internet somewhere? I think this is extraordinarily dangerous. You talk about a grid. I was talking about trees the other day having their own grid where they communicate and all that. Then we talked with Peter Vincent Pry about the electric grid going down. Well, we've got the tree grid going here where a teaspoon of that mycelium is like a teaspoon of it. It will stretch for a couple of miles. The threads are so fine. It's just ridiculous, And I'm wondering, okay, now we have this internet, the Internet of Things. Well, but now it's almost as though it's got its hooks in us so deep that we can never get those hooks out. And I'm just wondering, why can't we have an alternative to what we are becoming oppressed by more by the day? That's my question.
Well, I don't see it so much as being oppressed. Just like all technologies, especially something as powerful as the internet, it can be used for good or evil, and it obviously is. And it's done so much amazing things. Just the fact I'm sitting here in Acapulco, Mexico, talking to you live for free. I don't know where you are, somewhere in the U.S., I presume, and it's perfect quality. Like, this is great. This is beautiful, and we can communicate. We can actually trade this information, which is important information. So there's so many great things about it. And I compare the internet to the Gutenberg press. That changed. That was the last time that things really changed. That changed the game. Finally, people could actually get information to other people in other towns without actually having to know them and go in there and talk to them and stuff like that. And that's what the internet is. So I don't see, I see what Google's doing. And of course, Eric Schmidt is going to Bilderberg conferences, which I've gone to the last few to try to expose. And he goes to the White House once a week. So he's obviously evil. He's obviously, basically things like Facebook and Google, it's the CIA. They're tracking everything you do, but that's fairly common knowledge. Like, if people don't know that, if people don't know the NSA can watch anything you're doing, you got to just sort of wake up. So most people will know that, but they don't really care. Which, a lot of apathy is not a good thing. But in that sense, I don't mind it that much that they don't care too much. But as long as you're aware of it and just but use the internet for what it's good for. And you brought up, why haven't people created other alternate internets? They already have, and there's many of them. People branch off of the internet all the time. There's things called mesh networks. There's actually something Bitcoin's based on something called a blockchain. And there's all this new technology coming out now called blockchain technology. And there's one called MadeSafe, and they're actually trying to put the entire internet on the blockchain. So essentially, the internet wouldn't exist anywhere. So it'd be completely decentralized, uncontrollable, uncensorable, which is what they're trying to do right now. But they're having a hard time actually censoring a lot of this stuff. So they're kind of the main reason the world controllers, the globalists, are losing right now is because of the internet. So just because things like Google's on there and they're tracking everything you do and all of that, yeah, that's not great. But you don't have to use Google, right? So that's your choice. If you want to use, there's search engines out there that won't track you. There's ways of using your computer that you can't be tracked. You can do that if you want, if it's important to you. It's actually not that important to me because every single thing I do and say on YouTube already. So they can watch me all day in my house. I don't really care. I'm basically saying the same thing. Shut down the government, shut down the central banks. They're all evil. But I don't see it as being all that bad, the internet. And if anything, I see it as being the only chance we have right now. Without it, how would anyone even have any clue what's really going on? I don't know how anyone even knew how anything was going on before the internet. I couldn't imagine going to, well, of course, they burn half the libraries that have any decent information, the Alexandria Library and all that kind of stuff. Like the people, that's what they want to control the information. The internet has let that genie out of the bottle. So I say use it as much as we can before they turn it off, and they will try to turn it off at some point, but there's 7 billion of us out there, and a lot of people are very savvy and will find ways around it. For example, they tried to shut off Twitter, I believe, in one of the countries the U.S. attacked. I forget, Syria or somewhere, or maybe it was Turkey, when Turkey was the U.S. was backing Turkey with his whatever he's doing, and they shut off Twitter, but people found ways around it, and they got on Twitter. There's always hacks. There's always ways, using things like Bitcoin, so we can actually transfer money. So if you want to pay for something for somebody, they're in China right now, you can do that in 1 second with Bitcoin. It costs almost nothing, happens pretty much instantaneously. No one can stop it. No one really can find out who actually sent that money if you don't want them to, if you're careful about it. So that's beautiful. That's great. These are the technologies that will potentially free us, and that's the only hope I can see. Without the internet, I really don't see any chance. Without the internet, I'd be in those hills back there, probably just meditating and just eating some fruit and waiting until the world just ended, because it probably would at some point without the internet, without people having access to this information.
Wow. Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. And what I meant by Google was the cars on the street, the Google mapping, the eye in the sky, the infiltration into the phones. I mean, these phones are ridiculous. We haven't had a crew member's computer come on the other day. The camera just came on. The green light came on. So that was disabled immediately, and a piece of tape put over the lens. I've been putting tape over the camera since, I don't know, 2001 or 2. It's like, I just thought, I don't think I like this very much. The moment that they put the camera in the computer, it's like, yeah, look, where's that painter's masking tape? There it is. It won't screw up the screen, and there you can't see anything.
It was funny seeing Mark Zuckerberg had that photo in front of his computer, and he had the tape over the camera and a tape over the microphone on his computer as well.
Yeah, oh yeah. I think it's a really good idea. Well, so now... You were talking about buying Bitcoin at $3 in 2011. It's $1,300 now. So did we miss the boat?
No, not at all. I actually have been talking about that this morning, because it just broke to a new high just today, over 1330 right now. A lot of people, especially people who are big believers in the Bible, which I have no problem at all with. I think there's a lot of good stuff there. Absolutely. I'm just wondering who changed the Bible at what points. That's my questions. I'm questioning everything. But a lot of them will bring up, that's the mark of the beast when there's a cashless society. Well, that's what the government's trying to do right now. They're trying to get rid of all fiat currencies. You brought that up earlier. What they're doing in India, that was a trial run. They want to get rid of all cash because, as you pointed out, that makes it so people can transact privately and stuff like that. So that's bad. What the government's trying to do and getting rid of cash is really, really bad and very, very evil. And they want to get us all into this global taxation system where no one can ever transact without anybody knowing what someone transacted and being able to turn that off. So if you or I don't know about you, John, but I've said a few things. They might want to turn off my chip at some point. If we say something that they don't like, they can just turn it off. And all of a sudden, I can't pay the rent. I can't buy food. I'm not allowed to go anywhere because I'll be checked everywhere with scanners and stuff like that. That's what they want. And that's what's so evil about this sort of mark of the beast sort of thing. And that has been predicted in the Bible, which is very, very interesting. People should be paying attention to that. But what Bitcoin is the exact opposite. And that's the thing that a lot of people don't get. It's actually in response to what's going on with the central banks and fiat currencies and how controlling they are and how they want to control everything. Bitcoin is using the internet to get around any control. There is no Bitcoin head office. There is no Bitcoin CEO. There is no way to actually, Bitcoin is just numbers. And where do they exist? Nowhere really. It's great. And you can actually, if you memorize your passphrase, you can store all the Bitcoin you have in your own brain. So if you had $1 billion, you could store it in your own brain. There'd be no way anyone could take it from you unless they could read your mind, which actually U.S. government, CIA are working on right now. They are the enemy, of course. But Bitcoin is fantastic. Is it too late to get into it? It's no, not at all. It's still very early. I got into it in 2011 at $3. I said it could go as high as $1 million. I'm not saying it will, but it could if it became used as currency all around the world. It's all supply and demand. It's now at just a little over $1,300. I'm not saying you should go and sell your house or sell your gold or sell your silver or sell your retirement and buy go all into Bitcoin with it, but definitely start using it. It's incredibly powerful. Why is every government and central bank so against it? Just ask yourself that, and that should be just all you need to know about what's so powerful about it. It can actually get rid of all central banks, and it probably will, unless they turn off the internet. That's the only way they can stop it. Or an EMP attack, which would turn off the internet. So it's going to be very interesting, but definitely don't have any negative thoughts about Bitcoin. It is unbelievable. It's almost like a savior being sent from God. Amazingly enough, it was created in 2009, right at the very depths of the financial crisis, right when everyone thought all the banks were going to collapse, and they almost did. The only thing they've done since then is print more money to keep them alive. But that's when Bitcoin was created. It was almost like, just amazing that it happened at that exact moment in time. For a lot of people out there, think it's a scam. It's not a scam. Math is not a scam. No one controls it. Maybe it's created by the U.S. government. If it was, it's not in their control anymore. Sort of like the internet. The internet was, you could say, to some extent, was created at CERN in Switzerland. So to some extent, it wasn't actually the whole internet. It wasn't all computers were created there. It was just the protocol of the internet was created there. But you could say the government created the internet because of that. Al Gore even said he created the internet, right? The internet is great now. So we can use these things, even if they were created by the government, which I don't think Bitcoin was. If you look at Bitcoin, I see no reason why the government in 2009 would create this amazing currency, which could destroy all central banks and by proxy, all governments. I don't see why they would go ahead and do that. It makes no sense. But even if they did, it's out of their control. No one controls Bitcoin. You can transact anywhere in the world for free, basically. It costs a little bit, but hardly anything. Nothing compared to banks. Almost instantaneously. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You don't need anyone's permission. No one can stop you. No one even knows you're transferring money or not. This is beautiful. This is the power. That's what the power of central banking is, and that's why the Rothschilds have really been trying to control the world for the last few hundred years. They realized if they could control the money, they can control everything. They've said it numerous times. Now money's out of their control with Bitcoin, and so things are getting very, very interesting.
Oh boy. Okay, so should these Bitcoins be stored online, or should you put them in a little wallet you can put in your pocket?
There's different ways to store it. If you have a large amount, like a serious amount that if you lost it, you'd be devastated, you would want to hold it offline. So something not connected to the internet. These things get complicated. There's things called hardware wallets. There's even things like paper wallets. You can actually print out your Bitcoin thing and just store it somewhere. And as long as your Bitcoin isn't online, your client, no one could take your Bitcoin unless they can find that piece of paper or crack the password, which is impossible. Although there is talk about supercomputing getting to the point where it might be able to crack these passwords. We'll see. Things are always changing, always developing. But as of right now, you can hold it offline, and it'd be pretty much impossible for someone to steal unless they found that piece of paper. Basically, Bitcoin is essentially like cash. Just the same way you think about cash. If you've got $10,000 in cash under your mattress, think of Bitcoin as that way. If you had $10,000 of Bitcoin, it's basically the same. So you got to be careful with it. Make sure no one can break in your house or no one knows where you hid it or things like that. It's essentially like that. But you are your own bank. And it was actually drone bomber Barack Obama who said last year or 2 years ago that Bitcoin is like having a Swiss bank account in your pocket. And he's right. And they were talking about it like we need to shut it down because people have like Swiss bank accounts in their pocket. It's actually way better than a Swiss bank account because it doesn't actually exist anywhere. You become your own bank. It's not just money, but it's also a banking system. It's also a transaction system. You can also build things on top of it. It's a game changer. It's not revolutionary when it comes to money and banking. It's evolutionary, and people should look into it.
All right. I don't mean to go wax moronic here, but when you say store it offline, store it in what? What device do you put in your pocket that you're going to be careful with so nobody gets it?
Well, the big thing is if you have your Bitcoin online, that people can hack into your computer and somehow get your password or somehow get access to your Bitcoin. if you take it offline, so it's not stored anywhere online, nowhere connected to a computer. So you could put it on a USB stick, for example, or there's things called hardware wallets, like ones made by Trezor, Trezor. But you really only need these things if you're holding large amounts. If you're holding just like, I would recommend anyone out there, just get like if you can afford a few $100s worth of Bitcoin and just start using it. You'll be amazed. You can buy almost anything on the internet now with Bitcoin. And as soon as you start using it and for example, if you have a sister who lives on the other side of the country and she goes, oh man, I need $20. And you're like, well, how are you going to transfer that? Western Union, they're going to take like $4 of it. You got to walk down there. They're going to take all your ID and everything. Try bank transfer. Forget about that. The costs are going to be way too much. If she had Bitcoin, you had Bitcoin, she had a wallet, you just say, okay, $20, no problem, done, bing, and she'd hear a beep on her thing, and that'd be it. It'd be over. And so once you start to use it, you just start to realize how amazing it is. But don't get too worried about how am I going to store it or losing it and stuff like that, unless you're going to have a large amount. And if you're going to have a large amount, you should be very, very careful. You should definitely be using Bitcoin and understand it and do your research for a few months, I would suggest, before you even put a large amount of money into Bitcoin, because it is fairly easy to screw up and kind of lose it. There's many people have lost millions of dollars of Bitcoin just by not backing it up or losing their computer or losing their phone. So you got to be careful. But there's always ways to back it up, but don't put a large amount of money into Bitcoin until you understand how to back it up.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Yeah, and okay. So I'm not turning this loose, not just yet. So, you can buy Bitcoin in this town right down the street. There's if you go buy Bitcoins in middle of nowhere, Texas, and go over there, 123 North Main Street. It's right there. So you go in, and you go, I want to buy a couple of grand's worth of Bitcoin. So the guy goes, yeah, sure, no problem. So you do. And you give him your flash drive, or you hand over your little, do you know about Keep Key? The guy who runs this outfit called Keep Key, he sent me one, said, try it out, you'll love it. But that's what it is. It's a little wallet. It's just a little black box that you put your Bitcoin on.
Well, everyone's got like a smartphone today. I assume you probably do. Most people do. Just download a wallet on your Bitcoin. So, for example, I got numerous on mine. I don't know how much I want to show on my screen here, but I got Mycelium that's a great one. I really like that one. Airbit's pretty good. I got blockchain.info. I've been using that for years. Some people don't like it, but I like it. So I'll just open up one of my wallets here. I'll open up my Mycelium. So I'll just show it to the screen here. And there's my Bitcoin. I have hardly anything on this one. That's why I said don't start too much on things that are online. So I've got 0.34 Bitcoin on there, so $458. It actually shows the actual, I don't know if I can hold this right up, but it shows the actual amount. I don't know if I'm showing you my actual key or anything. I think that's all. I don't think anyone could see that. See, that's the thing. If I showed you my private key right now, someone watching right now could just take my Bitcoin. So I don't think this shows the private key. I'm no expert on privacy and stuff, but I think that's my public key. So if you want to send me Bitcoin, you just scan that and you can send me Bitcoin right now. I'd have to show you my private key and you could send it to me. So when you go to that store, you just say, oh, here's my Mycelium wallet. I want to buy $200 worth of Bitcoin. And you give him the $200 and you show him this and he just transfers it right then. Okay.
Let's make sure that doesn't show up on the...
No, don't worry about it. If I lose it, it'll be a learning experience that I got to be more careful.
Oh, good Lord. Well,
but I'm pretty sure that's just my public key, so it should be fine.
Do you know, the words come out, I don't want to get, I don't want to be labeled paranoid, but I am a little bit paranoid, which means I'm paying attention. I have a heightened sense of awareness. And when I read an article that says, if you hold up the peace sign, the digital photography is so good now they can actually steal your fingerprint from a digital photograph and mess with you. So it's like, let's put our gloves on, let's get our shemags going and our you are me mask and go out into public like that. That's pretty strange, man. Well, look, what have we not covered that we can cover? I mean, I just like talking to you. You probably got something there that we'd be interested to hear that's not on any list anywhere.
Oh, man, there's so many things. I do this all day, every day. So just off the top of my head, what to talk about, I don't even know. I'm into hockey. My team won last night. I don't know if anyone cares about that. Yeah, I don't really know. You're the host. You got to ask me questions. I can't come up with my own
Yeah, I was afraid that was coming. Well, here's the thing. I've always been a screw this, I'm going in kind of guy. But now, I got mad at I didn't get mad at him, but I got a little cross with him when he came on the program. He was talking about don't vote, don't pay taxes, don't do this, don't do that, leave. And I'm going, dude, really? And what? Wind up finding out that there's a bounty on Americans now who decide to not do anything except run away. So from that standpoint, I don't think it would be doing the world a service to have a few 100 million people just leave the United States and fan out across the globe. However, I'm becoming rather than a screw this, I'm going in guy. It's sort of like screw this, I'm leaving kind of guy. But you've gone to Mexico. But for so many people, I mean, myself included, I can't leave, even if I could, which I can. I still can't leave. I can't just go, well, I've just done all I can, so I'm going to just deal with this like a man and run. I mean, I can't do it. But are you thinking that if you can leave the United States, maybe you should think about doing that?
I've said that for years. I'm originally from Canada. I left around 2002 for very similar reasons that I would suggest people leave the U.S. Just seeing way too much government, way too big government, way too much communism, socialism, especially in Canada. But the U.S. is even worse now. They've got Obamacare and all that kind of stuff. I was seeing way too much taxes, way too much regulation. Way too little freedom. Everywhere you go, you can't do this here, you can't smoke there, you can't drink here, you can't drive that fast, you can't turn, you got to stop at this stop sign or you're going to get pulled over by a guy with a gun and he's going to want some money. I was just like, I'm out of here. That's the main reason I left. And I've lived all over the world. I traveled the world on a sailboat for a year exactly and sunk it in El Salvador. And then I went to about 100 countries afterwards. And I actually just ended up loving Mexico. And I just happened to love Acapulco. It's very free. That's one of the reasons that people say it's so scary. There's really no government here. There's no real police that are going to do anything. You handle your own business, which is how I like it. Sort of like the way the U.S. used to be, very free. And just the lifestyle, the culture is so much more relaxed. Like, I could go to any restaurant here, and I guarantee you no one at the table next to me is talking about Syria or North Korea. They're probably talking about what kind of music they like or how wonderful their daughter looked in that dress that other night. Just really, they're not all caught up with all this propaganda and fear and all that kind of stuff, and politics. They're just living their lives. And that's why I mostly live in Mexico, much freer, as I pointed out. The weather, of course, I don't mind at all, but cheaper. Like this place where I live, I'm renting, it's basically a mansion. It could be almost in like a rap video. It's so nice. You can see my view. It's pretty damn nice up on the side of a mountain in one of the nicest areas in Acapulco, and it's $1,500 a month. And I have a maid that I pay $12 a day. I have a cook that I pay $12 a day. I have a driver, takes my kids to Montessori school and back, $12 a day. So basically, for under $3,000 a month, I live like a king in here. Whereas if I lived in San Francisco for $3,000 a month, I could maybe get a top bunk of a bunk bed in a shared room in a very small apartment. So those are the main reasons why I left. But, I've heard that people say, I don't want to run. You're not really running. Like, for example, you mostly do your radio show. You can do that radio show anywhere with the internet, I would presume. I would just, consider, there's so many people I actually know, numerous radio hosts have actually moved here to Acapulco. Angel Clark of the Angel Clark Show, she moved here. We've had numerous others moved down here, and the internet's amazing. The internet's so bad in the U.S. because it's becoming a third world country. Most of the time when I talk to people in the U.S., their internet is way worse than mine. I've got like 100 megabit connection, actually being provided by wirelessly by a bunch of anarcho-capitalists that you can actually almost see where they are. That's actually being provided by microwave. There's no rules or regulations here, so people just set up their own businesses. So they set that up, and that's how I get my 100 megabit internet, which is great. Never goes down. It's actually get it from two different places. It's just amazing what you can do when there's no regulation, when you got a bunch of entrepreneurs. So that's why I don't live, and I actually try not to even go to the U.S. anymore. I was just there recently. I actually went to Berkeley and for that protests against free speech, which is kind of funny at Berkeley, right? And I got pepper sprayed and tased by communists, not even the cops. The cops actually all left, and they let the communists just attack everybody. And so that was my experience of being in the U.S. I was, most people in Mexico here were like, don't go to the U.S., it's dangerous. You're not going to end up in jail or kidnapped by cops or, terrorized by communists like I was or whatever, or TSA, or I'll end up, something. And, most people, including myself, just don't want to even go to the U.S. anymore. So when you say you don't want to run, it's like, it's not really running. It's just like, you just want to be somewhere more comfortable, where it's cheaper, where it's freer, and then you can still fight the government. So, if that's what you want to do, that's what I do on the internet from wherever you are.
All right. Well, look, this has been some huge fun. And all right, what's next for you? Are you do you go?
Next, I'm going to relax. I've been on a 5-day fast. That's another thing I'm doing lately. I've been on a master cleanse fast. Gonna go relax a little bit. I've been up all morning doing interviews. Probably write some stuff. Bitcoin just hit a new all-time high, so I'll have to do a blog at dollarvigilante.com, or for our YouTube channel. I just look up Dollar Vigilante on YouTube. We'll be talking about that. Just all the usual stuff I usually do here on the beach in Acapulco, Mexico. Hang out with the family and enjoy the weather.
Hey, what are the residency requirements? Is it tough to be able to move down there permanently? You got to jump through some hoops or what?
Well, it's interesting because everyone talks about illegal aliens in the U.S. There's over 1 million Americans living illegally in Mexico right now. It's actually become like a thing that the government's talking about. We got to crack down on these illegal American aliens. But really, they don't have anywhere near the control that the U.S. does. Or, the U.S. is one of the most prison-like places in the world. They track everything. They, watch it, show your papers, everything. You do this. Oh yeah, I want to buy some cigarettes. Well, show me your ID and, take my fingerprint scan and my face scan and all that kind of stuff. Here in Mexico, they don't have anything like that. So basically, who cares what the residency requirements are? They don't care. If anyone ever asks you and they're serious about it, the max you're supposed to stay legally is 6 months. But if you ever have anyone like a cop, which would never talk to you, because the cops are not really allowed to even talk to you here, which is great. They're not allowed to come on your property, which I like. And they're just nuisances. They're not really like cops in the U.S. Just give them like $5 or buy him a beer and he'll just go away. So it's great. So don't worry about the legal residency and all that. But if you do worry about it, it's very easy to get. You need an income of about $2,000 a month, which can be Social Security or anything like that. And then you can become a legal resident of Mexico if you want to.
John B. Wells, the Mexican. Wow. What a concept. Jeff.
Jose Wells.
Jose Wells. I'll be Juan. Juan, sí, Miguel.
Yeah, Juan Wells.
No, man. Juan Wells. Well, why not? You got a Juan Williams up there at Fox News. He's a black guy, so why not Juan Wells, the white guy in Mexico? I mean, I don't see a problem with this. I kind of like it. Well, look, this has been tremendous fun. Now, do you ever go physically to places to give conferences and lectures, or do you mostly just stay where you are and do it over the cables?
I used to travel a ton, but it really wore me out. I do every now and then go, but very rarely. I have my own conference now every year in Acapulco, Mexico in February called an Acapulco. And we also have our Dollar Vigilante conference the day before in Acapulco every year here in Acapulco. So that's mostly what I go to. I might go to Freedom Fest this summer in Las Vegas and maybe a few others, but I quite rarely travel anymore. I just prefer just to stay here in the comfort of my own home and do these YouTube videos.
All right. Well, look, God bless. Thanks for coming on. What a bunch of great ideas. And now, are you working on another book, or are you good for now?
I'm actually working on one, yeah. It's going to be about prior taxpayer or permanent traveler theory, which is a way to live around the world legally without paying any taxes and without having any government really control you in any way. So that book will be coming out in the next few months. It'll be free to subscribers of the Dollar Vigilante. So if people want to subscribe, got tons of books. I've written like 6 or 7 books that are already on there. Just go to dollarvigilante.com/subscribe. We've got a book on Bitcoin, so if you want to learn about Bitcoin, you can do that. We also have forums for people. We've got thousands of subscribers around the world. So you can go on there and ask them, hey, I just learned about Bitcoin. I want to buy some. I just read the book that Jeff wrote, but I want to get a bit more information. There's lots of people who help you out there. So just check all that stuff out and check me out on YouTube. That's where I am most of the time. All
right, that's a beautiful thing. Well, stay safe out there. You're enjoying life. So I would just say Don't touch a thing. It looks like you got it running right. Thanks a lot, Jeff.
Thank you.